great to be here with you, and thank you for the invitation. So I work in an organization called Zelena akcija, which means green action in Croatian. We're also part of a larger network of environmental organizations called Friends of the Earth, so which has a branch per country. So we are called Friends of the Earth Croatia. Basically, we're one of the oldest and biggest Croatian environmental NGOs. We've been founded in January 1990, so we'll be celebrating 33 years in action this year. We are based in Zagreb, but do our work all around Croatia in local we cooperate a lot with local communities and local activists, trying to support them in areas where we have expertise and knowledge and experience. We also work on commenting national policy, and also through our international contacts get involved in analyzing and commenting European policies.
Excellent, thank you. And since the very name of the organization and the topic here I want actually to cast a light on is what is it called, green transition. I want to ask you to tell us very shortly about what do you think about the current status in Croatia? How far is Croatia in terms of green transition?
Well, on the one hand, things are getting better in terms of green transition being something that is talked about and that is generally accepted as needed and wanted. We finally come to a place where we don't have to convince politicians that we actually do need a green transition to a post-fossil society. On the other hand, the level of ambition and the level of implementation that we see on the ground is not satisfying at all. We feel as if Croatia does not genuinely believe in the need for a transition and for a fast transition, and we feel that Croatian politicians are always, at least those in power, are always trying to find excuses as to how Croatia does not need to act swiftly and strongly because of its small size and some sort of perceived non-relevance in the global arena, which we think is completely wrong. At the end of the day, it's if you don't get on that wagon fast enough and efficiently enough, you will suffer the consequences once the world all over changes. So that's also one of the reasons why we should act more strongly in that field.
Interesting. Thank you very much again. And this year, Croatia marks a 10 years anniversary of EU membership. And in relation to that, I would also like to ask you, how do you see the EU's role in a green transition? Does it affect the policies in Croatia, and in which way?
It does to some extent, but again, I need to kind of express my regret that Croatia is acting rather passively in the European arena. In the policy analysis terms, Croatia is playing a part of what's called policy download actor. So it only downloads the policies and politics that somebody else has created, and does not take much active role in creating those policies and in kind of taking part in the bigger and wider dialogue at the EU level. Again, of course, one of the reasons which are cited is perceived relevance, and but of course, you know, that does not have to be like that, because you can always partner with other countries in similar position or of similar size, and you can recognize common interests and interests of the European Union as a whole, and take more active role in that way. What we've seen develop over these past 10 years, or maybe it's even better to speak about the past 20 or 25 years, because Croatia's process of assessing EU was a very long one, and it can roughly be divided in the pre-accession process and the process of Croatia being a member state. There was a lot of enthusiasm about revamping our whole legal framework as a part of accessing the EU, and there was a rather good mechanism that the European Commission used to kind of force Croatia to change its legal framework, the so-called conditionality. This conditionality is something that's basically lost after you become a member state. So the rules are laxed. You know, the implementation of the common policies is more it's not as effective. There are, of course, some instruments, but it's not as effective. And I think people still need to kind of see themselves as part of the EU, not in terms of just having a feeling of being members of the EU, but of using all the instruments, very complex instruments, which are at their disposal, which I do not see it happening on a much larger scale yet. And this, of course, includes the civil society as well. What did happen is that the kind of circumstances for the civil society and the actions of the civil society have changed as well, because in the pre-accession period, a lot of funding for the civil society came directly from the Brussels and from the centralized sources, and were managed and monitored from those sources. And then with the entering to EU, this kind of decentralized and came back to the national levels, which was then met with, of course, bigger political influence in terms of financing parties which will not be very critical towards the government, and on the other hand, putting too much of an administrative burden on the functioning of civil society organizations. So civil society organizations have to deal with much more administration, and have to do a lot of work which is not connected to the areas in which they work. And also, I think there's a tendency to kind of depoliticize what they're doing. There's a tendency to make out of civil society organizations more of research type organizations than advocacy organizations, which would put things on political agenda, advocate for it, and fight for its implementation. And we definitely see less of that with the entrance to the EU.